missile launches, explosions across Israel and Iran, aerial footage of Gaza, and military briefings narrate the spiraling escalation between Israel and Iran with continued missile strikes, and mention the mounting casualties in Gaza as tensions spike across the Middle East. Outline the latest developments. Israel has hit around 40 sites in Iran in a significant military campaign, while Iran's retaliatory strikes have reportedly resulted in dozens of casualties in Israel. Casualty figures in Gaza have surged, with 144 bodies delivered to hospitals in the past 24 hours, including many civilians caught in humanitarian aid queues. Highlight Iran's response, signaling that imposed war or peace is unacceptable, and warn that any U.S. intervention could cause irreparable consequences. Recall recent U.S. commentary hinting at possible involvement, adding another layer of uncertainty to the conflict. Report on the downing of an Iranian-made drone by the Israeli Air Force in northern Israel, noting the rising drone warfare and advanced air defenses in the region. No casualties or damages have been confirmed, but the incident adds another pulse of tension. Take viewers inside Iran's capital, where chaos and uncertainty prevail. Show images of families carrying suitcases and seeking refuge in metro stations because of aerial strike warnings. Describe how young Iranians are turning to the internet on platforms like Discord and WhatsApp, seeking safety, information, and connection during the crisis. Zoom out to the U.S., where the policy landscape remains sharply divided. On one hand, some U.S. officials caution against deepening military engagement in another Middle Eastern war. On the other, voices calling for decisive action believe this escalation has been a long time in the making. Analyze how internal divisions within official circles and Congress shape the country's posture. Delve into the contested nuclear narrative around Iran. On one side, Israeli officials insist Iran is close to developing nuclear weapons. On the other, U.S. intelligence agencies and nuclear inspectors find no evidence to support those claims. Examine how viral narratives, strategic messaging, and historical parallels such as comparisons to Iraq War misinformation are shaping public perception and geopolitical strategy. Return to Iran's diplomatic stance, emphasizing self-defense and continued commitment to dialogue, even amid military exchanges. Explore international efforts to mediate the crisis, especially European-led diplomatic maneuvers. Report on the upcoming meeting in Geneva between European ministers and the Iranian Foreign Ministry, coordinated with U.S. support, aimed at preventing full-scale war. Explore the devastating situation in Gaza, where infrastructure damage has led to widespread internet blackouts. Central and southern Gaza have been offline for more than 32 hours, amplifying the humanitarian crisis and impeding coordination of relief efforts amid intense bombardment. Introduce a segment on the conflict's impact in Yemen. Report that recent U.S. strikes targeting Houthi militants have caused a tragic civilian death toll similar to decades of prior operations. Detail the most devastating incidents, including attacks on key facilities that killed over 150 civilians, and discuss growing calls for accountability from human rights groups. Highlight domestic U.S. political pressure as Muslim and progressive organizations call for congressional authority over war decisions, citing the Constitution's War Powers framework. Explain that proposals in Congress aim to block unauthorized military intervention in Iran without full legislative sign-off. Shift focus to Russia's involvement and strategic interests. Note that Moscow depends heavily on Iran for critical nuclear cooperation at Bushehr and has called for stability and resistance to Iran's collapse amid geopolitical turbulence. detail high-level diplomatic talks between the Kremlin, Tehran, and other key players aiming to ease tensions. Introduce coverage of regional diplomatic countermeasures and alliances forming amid the crisis. Include China's statements urging restraint, North Korea's condemnation of Israel's airstrikes, and statements from other regional powers about the potential for broader conflict. Analyze how digital platforms have become front lines of propaganda and activism. Show how hashtags related to the conflict are trending on Twitter or X, Telegram channels are pushing state narratives, and TikTok videos from affected civilians are going viral. Discuss how disinformation and grassroots coverage are reshaping public awareness and international pressure. Reassess Israel's rationale for the aggressive campaign. Examine why such bold strikes against Iranian and nuclear facilities may align with Netanyahu's political strategy at home as well as broader national security doctrine. Contrast this with Iran's strategic calculus, which typically favors asymmetric retaliation and proxy engagements over direct military confrontation. In the U.S., analyze the growing partisan divide over the administration's stance. Some lawmakers see U.S. neutrality as vital, while others push for deterrence. Show recent statements from Congress about shifting war powers and public surveys. Measuring American opinions on military action in Iran and ongoing operations in Gaza. Take a wide-angle look at possible military scenarios. If the U.S. targets Iran's Fordow facility, what would be the anticipated immediate and long-term consequences? Include expert analysis on potential missile retaliations against U.S. forces in Iraq or Syria and possible disruptions to global energy markets. Offer an explainer segment about the technical and geographical importance of sites like Fordow, Bushehr, and Tehran military installations. Use satellite maps and expert commentary to break down what makes these areas targets and what might happen if they're hit. Discuss broader global economic implications. Emphasize how tensions in the Middle East could send energy prices soaring, impact shipping routes in the Red Sea, and deepen recovery challenges in Europe still grappling with post-pandemic and post-Brexit strains. Include a human interest interlude showing displaced families in Tehran, Gaza, and refugee-hosting communities. Use interviews or voiceovers describing daily life under siege, scarcity of food, water, and shelter, and how communities adapt under conflict. Profile frontline journalists and analysts bringing real-time updates from conflict zones, what protections and challenges they face and why their reporting matters globally. Provide a short retrospective on previous U.S. interventions in the region, Bosnia, Iraq, Libya, and lessons on how complex wars can drag on. Compare those lessons with the current Iran-Israel escalation and U.S. posture. As the segment nears the end, offer critical questions for the audience. Will diplomacy prevail? Could accelerated military escalation spark a broader war? What roles might international institutions like the UN or Red Cross play if humanitarian corridors open? How might domestic politics in Iran, Israel, and the United States pivot based on how the conflict unfolds? Conclude with a forward look. Monitor the situation in Gaza, the upcoming Geneva diplomacy, and any shifts from the Iranian leadership. Track missile activity, U.S. military movements, and emerging economic ripple effects.